So b square minus 4ac, guys, is the discriminant. B square minus 4ac can have 3 values. It's part of the quadratic formula. So if the part underneath the square root is positive, the square root of a positive number gets you 2 answers, plus minus. There are 2 possibilities. So whatever's on the outside minus b over 2a, but if the inner part underneath the square root is positive, there will be 2 answers that you would get for an equation, plus minus की वजह से. So b square minus 4ac, when it's greater than 0, it returns 2 solutions or 2 real values of x is what returns. When b square minus 4ac is less than 0, so you're trying to solve a quadratic equation for equal to 0, but if there's a negative inside the square root, the negative value's square root is not possible. So there will be no answers, no real values. So you say there are no real solutions when b square minus 4ac is less than 0. Similarly, now if b square minus 4ac, the inner part inside the square root was a 0, so plus minus 0 doesn't even make any sense. It is just minus b over 2 is the only one answer you end up getting if it's a 0 over here. So when it's a 0, b square minus 4ac is a 0, there's one real solution. This one real solution is also termed at times as the repeated root. This no real solutions is also known as no real roots. The 2 real values of x are also known as two distinct roots. Okay, I'll use the word. 2 distinct. Distinct means different. Roots. That's what you're getting. All based on what b square minus 4ac is equal to. So it's positive, it's another thing. Negative, it's another thing. Equal to 0, it's another thing. So based on this, we are able to figure things out. Now, let's, before we march on, this is one little fact. I will get back to this fact again, but before we do anything with this, I would want to add another system of understanding, that's quadratic inequalities. Solving quadratic equations, you've been solving, you've been doing completing the square, but you've not done any quadratic inequality. Now, this is one of the most important skills to acquire, quadratic inequalities. I'll relate it with the the simple inequalities that you have done in IGCSE. I'll relate it with that. So in basic equality, if you had 1 minus 2x less than 5, you would say the 1 goes on that side and it subtracts from 5, and you have something which is equal to 4. You divide this by minus 2 and you flip the inequality sign. This was a key element. You change the direction of the equality sign. Change the sign. Why did you change the inequality sign? The reason why you change the inequality sign, I'll give you a very, very basic concept. We do say that minus 5 is less than minus 1 because it's further away from the 0 value. That's minus 1 here, and that's perhaps minus 5 is over here. So when you divide or by minus, you don't say 5 is less than 1 anymore. You would rather say 5 is greater than 1. You would need to flip the sign. So it's only when you're dividing or multiplying by a negative number, you have to change the inequality's direction. So when we multiply or divide by a negative number, we have to change the inequality direction. So this is very important for us. All right, so ये key बातें हैं. These are very important. You must never forget that. Quadratic inequality.
If we're not dividing or multiplying by a negative number,
then there's no need. Then there's no need. You must not change the inequality sign then. So for example, you've got 2x less than 11. So when you divide by 2, there's no need. X is less than 11 by 2. But if it's minus 5x less than minus 10, and you divide by a negative number, you have got to change the inequality's direction. Then x is greater than 2. Plain and simple. You got this? Because now we're going to move towards the quadratic inequalities. All right, so quadratic inequalities, starting with an inequality as simple as x squared less than 4. If I was to say x squared is equal to 4, you would have ended up getting x is equal to plus minus 2 based on the fact that you would square root x squared over 4. Okay, so you'd square root x squared and 4, and you would get x is equal to plus minus 2. These are your two solutions. Now, these two solutions, if we put them down on a number line, these are the roots of the quadratic curve. Minus 2 and plus 2. They are the roots of the quadratic curve. If someone would say, oh, sir, I can just do it like that, and then I can say x is less than 2 or x is less than minus 2 and be done with it. That's wrong. This is so wrong. You can't just start imagining stuff. So what do? You sketch. That is how we are going to approach solving quadratic inequalities. We'll sketch the system, the curve. Okay, how would we sketch? What are the steps? X squared minus 4 less than 0. Rewrite it. X minus 2x plus 2 less than 0. Solve x minus 2x plus 2 equal to 0. Or I could have just done x squared equals 4, ignoring the inequality. So step number 1 involves solve for roots by ignoring the inequality sign. That's the first step, because we need the roots in order to sketch. That's why we need the roots. We need the roots in order to sketch. That's the thing. I'll write that down. We need two things to sketch. A quadratic curve, a parabola, or solving a quadratic inequality. And those two things are, number 1, the roots. Number 2, the shape. These are the keys. These are the key elements. One is the root and the other is the shape. They are the key features. Quadratic inequality hai, what you're going to do is you're going to make sure you sketch it. There's no other बहस की बात ही नहीं है. There are other ways, but I want you to sketch it. This is what I want, and I would expect people to do what I'm telling them to do, because this is quadratics ka one of the most important things. That's why I'm going very slow. That's step number one. Get the roots.
There are two ways to sketch a parabola. Yeah.
Yeah. Two things. Two ways need two things. We need two things to sketch this parabola. You could have sketched a parabola using what we've been doing. We've been using many things. We've been using roots. We've been using y-intercept. I never talked about the y-intercept. We have been using vertex. I never talked about the vertex. We have been using the shape. So I've only talked about the roots and the shape. No need for these two. No need for the y-intercept. No need for the vertex. But I need you to not mess things up. Acha ji. Plain and simple now. One easy, swift motion. Let's sketch. It's a minimum curve because x squared is positive. This is the curve. Sketched. 2 seconds. To do all this, it takes you 2 seconds. It says less than 0. I'm going to shade the region which it wants. And you can then ask or think about it. So I am shading this region. Why am I shading this region? The reason I am shading, that you've got to understand the reason. This is where the whole argument lies. Sari kahani idhar hai. Guys, what is x square minus 4? So one could ask, what is x square minus 4? What is x square minus 4? I would want you to understand that it is the value of y. It is the value of the function. X square minus 4 is the value of the function. Y is equal to x square minus 4. So they're asking for, basically, they're asking for when is y less than 0? That's what they're asking for. When is y less than 0? So the inequality translates to, I'll write that in a sentence, when y less than 0. That's what they're asking you. Y 0 se chota kahan hai? When is y less than 0? So y is less than 0. You need to be very, very clear about this. This is the line y is equal to 0, the x-axis. Above the x-axis, you've got y greater than 0. Below the x-axis, you've got y less than 0. This should be clear to a lot of people. But if it's not clear, there's no problem. Guys, you need to understand y-axis mein, y-axis, oops, what just happened? Undo. Okay, so guys, y-axis mein, हमारे पास ये 0 होता है ना point. What is this point? 0 point होता है. इसके ऊपर क्या है? Y values positive है. और इसके नीचे क्या है? Y values negative है. What is the question? X square less than 4. You rewrote this as x square minus 4. You found x square minus 4's roots. You sketched that y curve. You sketched, what did you sketch? You sketched y is equal to x minus 2 into x. That's what you sketched. And they're saying, when is it less than 0? It means the y. It's less than 0 below the x-axis. What's the final answer? The final answer is very simple. The final G. Let me give the final answer and then you can ask. So the final answer is x 2 to minus 2. This is the final answer. The set of values from 2 to minus 2, this is your final answer. This is where the values are below the x-axis. Yes, you can ask now.
Can you not take a point on the of above the parabola and below the parabola and see whether it's whether 0 is greater than x squared minus 4 and then shade it.
A point above the x-axis, above the parabola, above the x-axis, on the parabola above the x-axis. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so if you were to take a point, because we are sketching, we're not drawing this graph, right? You need to understand that we're just sketching, randomly sketching. So I don't have points. The only points that I was focusing on were only two, which were the roots, this point and this point. These are the only 2 points that I'm focusing on. That's what I asked you. When you step 1 is sketch. Step 1 is to solve for the roots. Step 2 was to sketch based on the shape. Sketch the curve based on the shape, passing through the roots, of course. And what's step 3? You just visually solve the equation. How do you visually solve the equation? By looking at what you're solving for. You're solving for y less than 0. Let's do a few practice questions. Let's do a few practice questions so you get a better understanding. X squared minus 4x is greater than 0. Step number 1. Ignore the inequality and solve for the roots. The roots are 0 and 4. Make a number line. Plot the roots. Consider the shape. X squared is positive. It's a minimum curve like that. What does it need? It needs y greater than 0. When is y greater than 0? Above the x-axis is where y is greater than 0. Which part is that? This part and this part based on the parabola. What are the answers? The answers are to the right of 4 and to the left of 0. So this would be x less than 0 or x greater than 4. It's a disjoint. I'll redraw the number line. It's a disjoint 0 say less and 4 say more. It's a disjoint set. Why is it a disjoint set? Set is values that are there. A set of values before 0.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
You cannot hear me? You have trouble hearing?
No, not really.
All right.
Like your mic is making a noise.
Okay, now is that fine? Now you can hear me?
Yeah, it's better.
All right, ठीक हो गया. So I was saying that this is a disjoint set of values of x. The values are before 0 and after 4 is the answer. Why is it the answer? Because the values are greater than 0 over there. How are they greater than 0? Because this is the y values. These are the y values that are above the x-axis. They are positive. They are greater than 0. ऊपर होगा greater than 0. नीचे है less than 0. So अगर यही question होता, but it was inequality की direction फर्क होती, you would have had a different response to that. उसमें क्या होता?
So do you always take the y values?
You're always taking the y values because this is an expression for y. You're always taking the y values and you're answering in x form. So you're basically giving us a set of values of x for which it occurs. जिस तरह सवाल होता है x square minus 4x less than 0. अगर less than 0 होता, you would note that this is the part which is less than 0. Do you understand that? This is the part less than 0. The part above 0 is this one here. ये जो ऊपर है, this is above 0, greater than 0. What is 0 line? 0 line is the x-axis, जहाँ पे y की value 0 होती है.
Sir, how do you know what sign to put?
How do you know which inequality direction to put? Okay.
Yeah.
So, acha. Now, notice what I've made. I made an arrow. I made a circle, an empty circle, and I made an arrow indicating all values to the left of 0, all values less than 0, give me a y value which is greater than 0. This is a y value greater than 0. This is a positive value greater than 0. While these ones are negative values. Do you understand that now? How do I indicate the forces side pe? Because every value of x which is larger than 4 will get you positive results. Iska koi example dekh lo. Take any number. Take 5. Put the 5 here. 5 squared minus 4 times 5. That's 25 minus 20. Is it greater than 0? Yes, it is. So x had to be larger than 4. Less than 0 ko confirm kaise hoga? Take any number smaller than 0. Let's say negative 1. Plug in negative 1. Negative 1 squared 4 into negative 1. Is that greater than 0? Yes, it is. But what about numbers from 0 to 4? Take any number. Let's say take 1. So when you put 1 in the inequality, 1 squared minus 4 times 1, this comes out as minus 3. Is it greater than 0? Is minus 3 greater than 0? No, it is not. Do you get that? Do you get the inequality direction? Let's try 2, 3 more ताकि ये और समझ आए. Let's try more. All right, so this new one, x squared minus x plus 6 less than 0. What's the step? Ignore the inequality, solve for the roots. 3 and 2. X common, x minus 3, 2 common. Oh, I got it wrong. Sorry, my bad. So let me change the question. Minus 6 kar diya isko maine. Now it's correct.
Sir, above, I think I may see something wrong, but I think I see an error above.
Where?
In the 1 square minus 4 bracket minus 1. Shouldn't the minuses cancel each other out?
Minus
So
4.
Minus bracket minus 1.
And this minus. So they would become plus, right?
Yeah.
So this would become plus and this would be 1 plus 4, which is larger than 0. So yes, it is larger than 0.
So why did you write minus 3 at the end?
Oh, this was okay. So I'll write down what I'm plugging in. I am plugging in the value 5. In it, I was plugging in the value x minus 1. In it, I was plugging in the value x1. All right. So I was plugging in 3 different values from 3 different places.
So I got confused. Sorry.
Kushyota, that might be a question which others did not ask, but would have had. So I was taking a value from here, and from here, just to see how does the inequality react to these numbers. So I was getting a true result over here. I was getting a true result over here, and I was getting a false result for the value that I chose. ये वाली जो मैंने value choose की थी, it was 1. And it did not satisfy the inequality. The number that I chose, minus 1, sorry, 0. So the number that I chose before 0 was the number -1. ठीक है, वो मैंने plug in किया था. I plugged in -1 and it gave me a true result. Then I took a number larger than 4, which was 5. I took 5 and it was also giving me a true result. True. So this was true, this was true, this was false. But you don't need to do this extra bit if you have already sketched and seen कि किधर lie करता है. We're practicing a little more. So carrying on.
I don't understand. Sir, I don't understand this true false thing.
Okay, this is a true false. Just as an example, I'll visit it. After having done this, I'll revisit it. Achha ji. So -2 and 3 are the roots. So -2 and 3. Now for the shape. -2 is the root. X plus 2 is equal to 0. X is equal to -2. X minus 3 is equal to 0. X is equal to 3. These are your roots. Then you sketch. The shape is a minimum curve. This is the shape of the graph. Look at the inequalities direction. They need less than 0. They basically need when is y less than 0. They basically need when is it below the x-axis. This is the region where it's below the x-axis. This part here is where it's below the x-axis. So what are the values of x which you need? You need values of x between -2 and 3. When it's below the x-axis.
I have a question.
G.
If we talk about like not quadratic equations and we talk about like linear ones, such as, for example, x plus y is equal to something, and instead of the is equal to sign, they put an equality sign. So how do we like shade the area of it?
So you're saying that x plus y greater than or equal to 0, that kind of thing from your IGCSE?
Yes. So do we isolate the variable like y is equal to 0 minus x? So is there some other method?
All right. So yeah, okay. That part that you did in IGCSE, that is not really something which we would focus on here in your A levels. Okay. That's like something which you would see this. Fine. I'll just show you. But this is like IG की चीज़. But that's A level.
Sir, can you explain it again? That how did you get the sign for x squared minus x minus x less than 0?
Sir, how will you know where to shade? I still don't understand that.
All right. So the sign which you're saying, the shape ka sign, is that what you're saying?
No, sir. I'm talking about the x squared minus x less than 0. How do you know it's less than 0? The sign.
So this is a question. Okay.
So also you said you need to find the values between -2 and 3. So why do you like shade above x outside of the parabola?
All right. For this one, the one that I've written right now.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. So I have like 4 questions to answer. So the first one, how do I know the shape? Which is the way we know the shape is based on the coefficient of x squared. Okay. How do we know which part to shade? That's like a question which everybody has. So let me just go back.
The sign tells us this time it was less than, so we just got that, how do I say, that kind of little cup thing below the line. So, but if it was greater than, we would have colored the sides like the disjoint set earlier.
बिल्कुल ठीक. So ये हमारे पास quadratic expression है, and I said that the quadratic expression is basically values of y. So ये y की value है. Y की value 0 होती है on the x-axis. Y's value is positive above the x-axis. It's more than 0. These are the y values. I'm putting pluses just to indicate that they are more than 0. And the minuses indicate that the y values are less than 0, below the x-axis. So नीचे x-axis से ऊपर it's greater than 0. X-axis से नीचे it is less than 0. And what do they need? They need less than 0. So that is why I am indicating by shading the area that this is the part that you are interested in, the part that is below the x-axis.
Sir?
And let me finish, please. And for what values of x does it occur? It occurs for values from -2 to 3. That is where it occurs. So your answer is from -2 to 3. For values from -2 से लेके 3, any number that you plug in here will have a negative result. You could randomly verify. Pick x as 0. Take x as 0. Put it in the inequality. 0 squared minus 0 minus 6 less than 0. Isn't it the case? Yes, it is. Plug in 1. Plug in 1. 1 squared. So plug in 1. 1 squared minus 1 minus 6. Isn't it less than 0? Yes, it is. Plug in any other number between -2 and 3, and you will get this result. Do you still have those questions, guys? Hanji, one by one.
Sir, can I? You said you would get to my question after solving it. So just how did you get the graph?
Here is your question. How do I get the graph?
No, I mean the earlier one with x squared minus x minus 6 is less than or equal 0.
Yeah, I just wrote less than 0. This is a question. This is my quadratic inequality question.
Yes, so then how did you get that graph?
By doing two things. The first thing that I did was I found the roots. That's the first thing. The second thing.
Why did it come out that way?
Because the graph is always going to cut through the roots. The quadratic graph always passes through the roots. That's what the roots are for it to cut through that place. And the shape, that's what you're focusing on. The shape depends on the value of a being the coefficient of x squared. So if
I'm sorry, but just so we know, to confirm our concept of graphs, if the a value was 2x squared, then the graph would be steeper, right? The slope.
We don't care about the steepness anymore.
But it would just say that
just the shape, this one or this one. We don't care about the steepness at all.
So if it's plus x squared, then it's always that U shape, and if it's minus x squared, it's that N shape.
Yeah, this is when a is larger than 0, and this is when a is less than 0. Correct. All right. Now, other questions people had?
Sir, so our equation is another way of writing y, and so when it's less than 0, you have to shade beneath the graph.
Yep. Equation is basically y. Basically y. So less than 0 below the graph.
Sir, I don't get. Sir, can you go back to that other side? No, not the A one. Just stay here. Which no, not there. Just go back here. Yes, sorry, something wrong with my screen for a second.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, I don't get what true, false, and real means anymore. I originally did in reference to the quadratic equation, but how does that apply here? How does like the x values? Can you explain what it means by true, real, and false?
All right. So basically what you're doing is you're solving an inequality, and the inequality has a variable x. So basically what the result of any equation is always values of x, right? So the result of an inequality will be set of values of x for which this would be true. A quadratic graph being less than 0 will be true. So x squared minus x minus 6, although the graph exists everywhere, right? An x squared minus x minus 6 graph exists everywhere. It exists after 3. It exists before minus 2. It exists between them as well. But when is it less than 0? Only in the region from minus 2 to 3. So by considering other x values, आप इसके अंदर वापस डाल रहे हो, or they are giving you a false inequality sign because they are not the required region. So by expressing it like this, you're restricting the region that you want. Does that make sense? Okay, that and this is what your original question was. Marshall, your question about disjoint set. Marshall, this is a joint set because minus 2 to 3, there's no division, there's no gap. While in a disjoint set, there's no connection. There's a schism, there's a gap, there's no overlap. It's not continuous. It's disjoint.
I'm sorry, but just to make another observation, because I've observed it through the equation, I want to confirm it that just in case if there's a question testing this and we're running out of time, can we quickly confirm that if we actually plug in the value of the roots, like minus 2 and 3 into the equations, we just get the value 0?
Yes, you would get the value 0, yes. And that's where you first found them initially. Okay? All right, more practice now. Okay, more practice, guys. We have to practice a little more.
Sir, I don't understand. Sir, I don't understand this.
The sketch, the yes and no thing, the false and
Any
the
of this. I don't understand.
The whole quadratic inequality?
No, look, I understand the basic algebra. I understand that part. But anything and everything beyond that, I can't comprehend.
ठीक हो गया. All right, give yourself time. All right,
No,
so
sir, I don't need time. I need help. I need an explanation. If I give myself time, I'll be wasting time.
By time, I mean wait for me to explain even more. All right, does that make more sense? All right, so X.
The lesson's coming to an end.
Yeah, we have about 3 minutes.
Correct.
3 minutes, I guess. All right, enough time for one example and make things clearer. X minus x squared is greater than or equal to 0. So as I mentioned earlier, आपने क्या करना है? First step, आपने root निकालना है. That's the first step. You got x की value 0, you got x की value 1. Second step, on a number line, plot them 0, 1. Then consider the shape. X squared is negative. Since it's negative, what is the shape of the graph?
Sir, you made a small mistake in your calculations and algebra.
All right, I switched it around.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. But the roots are still the same. So 0 and 1, and the shape is this one over here. Now, what is it written? Greater than or equal to 0. So that's basically y greater than or equal to 0. Where is y greater than or equal to 0? Above the x-axis. Where is it less than or equal to 0? Below the x-axis. Where is it 0? On the x-axis. But what do we need? We need the region above 0. So what do you shade? The region which is above 0. This is the region which is above 0. This is the part that you shade. What are the x values to this? What are the answers to this? So x is between 0 and 1. That's your answer. Because you're solving for greater than 0. Does that make sense now?
Sir, I have a question.
G.
Sir, when it's a minimum graph and we have to shade above y when it's above 0, so why do we shade outside the parabola?
The sides wali baat. Why did we shade outside the parabola over here on the sides? It's just helping us to understand that this is the part which is above the y-axis. It's not truly what you're shading. It's shading is for like helping purposes, nothing else. The true values lie on the parabola themselves. So the shading is just for our assistance, our mental assistance.
The lesson is over. Sorry.
All right, chalo.
One last tiny question which you could even answer orally.
Yeah.
And that question is, I mean, that question being, I understand if you get two of these values, but if you get, say, multiple values, then what? For example,
parabola में multiple values नहीं होंगी ना. Parabola would have maximum
two. Will only ever get two.
Parabolas only cut at two places. Max, they cut at two places.
Thank you, sir. Can we go to our physics lesson?
Yes. All right. Take care, guys.
I'm sorry, a quick question.
Yes.
In this, the greater or equal graph, we were basically, you could say, inside the parabola, the shaded region. But let's, if x square was positive and the curve was the other way around, would we shade outside that region like we did for other graters?
For example, what you're saying is if it was x square was positive like that and greater than equal to 0 and the outside region, and the answer then.
It's just reversed when the x square value is reversed. I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Welcome. I hope G.
Apologies for taking that assignment to be from you.
All right. G.
Sir, हम ऐसा कर सकते हैं that we take a point above or below the parabola and then recheck whether it satisfies the inequality, and if it does satisfy the inequality, that's when you shade the part.
Okay, that's a problem. If you take a point above the parabola, like this point, and you take a point below the parabola.
Sir, in the sense, I meant not above the parabola, I meant above the x-axis.
Any point above the x-axis?
Yeah, like that's not above the parabola.
On the parabola?
Yeah.
Okay, on the parabola, how are you getting that point? How are you? So this is the point, let's say this point. So what do? Take point 0.5?
Yeah.
And you plug 0.5 in here. 0.5 minus 0.5 ka square. So that's 0.5 minus 0.25. And is it greater than equal to 0? The answer to that is yes.
You can do that, right?
So you can do that. And the way I showed what you were just mentioning is through a number line. I gave you the idea that you could take values around the roots and check which of them are satisfying. So 0 और 1 के बीच में जो थी ना वहां पे inequality was being truly being satisfied, and on the sides it wasn't. यहाँ पे sides पे it wasn't. So the answer is between 0 and 1. That's one other way. इस तरह आपको sketch करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती. But I would suggest why not just sketch and see, visually see. Okay? All right. Any questions? Okay. So I think let's end it here.